Welcome to a video on childhood maltreatment. This video was made because childhood maltreatment research is still relatively new, and it is important for people to understand what it is and how it can impact children. 40 years ago, we lived under the impression that children were naturally resilient and could easily bounce back, but now we know a lot more, and it's important that parents, teachers, police officers, really everyone understands it so that we can work together to prevent it and intervene. Let's start by defining what childhood maltreatment is. Children can experience a number of different traumatic experiences, such as the death of a parent, a natural disaster, or witnessing a violent event. Childhood maltreatment is a type of complex trauma that is considered prolonged as opposed to an isolated event and is within the context of the child's family. So what are the different types of maltreatment? Physical abuse. This is when a child is being physically injured by someone who is supposed to have a caregiver role, or when a child is being harmed but a caregiver does not intervene. Examples of this could be continuous hitting or punching of a child. Signs of this could be bruises, broken bones, or regular hospital visits. Emotional abuse. This is also sometimes referred to as psychological abuse. This includes a pattern of behavior that would affect the child's healthy emotional development or sense of self. Examples of this could be using love as leverage, insulting them, or being overcritical. Signs of this could be a child talking badly about themselves, a child having a hard time controlling their emotions, or being overly anxious. Sexual abuse. This is when an individual who is supposed to be providing care for a child abuses his or her power by inappropriately exposing a child to sexual matter that is beyond their sexual and psychological maturation. This can include direct contact, such as inappropriately touching a child or forcing them to touch. It can also include indirect exposure, such as performing sexual acts in front of them. Signs a child has been exposed to this is a child inappropriately touching other children at school or avoiding to be alone with someone. Neglect. This includes withholding proper care that a child needs for healthy development. This can include withholding physical care, such as infant-mother touch bonding, or failing to produce a safe home. It can include withholding proper medical or psychological care, or even withholding a proper education for them. Some signs of this could be a child wearing dirty clothes, not having sufficient lunch, or missing a lot of school. A newly recognized form of maltreatment is exposure to intimate partner violence. This includes a child witnessing or being exposed to a violent act between either the parents or family members. An example of this would be a child witnessing a father attack their mother. Generally speaking, if a child is exposed to maltreatment, they are more likely to be exposed to multiple types. It can also set the course to them being vulnerable to other types of trauma, such as peer violence. So how often do these types of treatment happen in Canada? According to the Public Health Agency of Canada, in 2018, data was collected from child welfare agencies, and of their substantiated cases, neglect and exposure to intimate partner violence were the two most likely types to occur, with an incidence rate of 34%, followed by physical maltreatment with 20%, then emotional maltreatment with 9%, and then sexual maltreatment with 3%. It should be noted that all data concerning this topic is rough because of the low rates of reporting. So what are the impacts of child maltreatment? Let's start by looking at the brain. The brain is an amazingly sophisticated system that is responsible for processing, storing, interpreting, and outputting all of our behaviors and thoughts. Our brain is made up of just under 100 billion neurons that are working together to form connections, and these are all based on our experiences. These connections will shape everything we do, say, and think. Our brain continues to develop and adapt throughout our lives, but the majority of our functional processing systems occur during childhood. In a developing brain, many of our neural connections are not stable, so they will either become strengthened from repetitive use or disappear. Depending on the type of childhood a child has, will drastically determine their outcome. An early developing brain needs a strong foundation that will help the child cope and strive in later years. This is formed by positive interactions with a caregiver. A child and caregiver can form a healthy attachment by having a reciprocated, reinforced back-and-forth exchange. An example would be if a baby boy is hungry, he may cry, which will alert the caregiver, and then the baby will be fed. The baby has now learned that there is someone that he can depend on, and this will start to form a healthy attachment. It's these exchanges of warm and positive cues that build the healthy framework of neural processes for a child. Having a healthy development significantly increases the chance of a child growing up to have a positive life experience. Now, on the other hand, if a child grows up with an extensive amount of stress in his or her life, like trauma or neglect, and hasn't been able to form a healthy attachment with a caregiver, developing brain structures are likely to become compromised, which can lead to a number of health problems in later years. So what are the possible outcomes of child maltreatment? One possible outcome are problems with emotion regulation. Children who experience maltreatment may have difficulty staying in control or expressing their emotions. This could include frequent temper tantrums, problems with aggression or anxiety, or being very withdrawn. Possible mental disorders associated with this is ADHD, bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, anxiety disorders, or depression. Another possible outcome is disassociation. Some children who experience ongoing intense trauma, such as sexual abuse, cope by detaching themselves from the situation and going into a state of disassociation. Some signs of this could be a child staring into space in a trance-like manner and memory loss. This could potentially turn into a dissociative disorder or self-harm. Another possible outcome are behavioral issues. Some children who experience maltreatment will develop patterns of aggressive or disruptive behavior. They can show signs of a lack of impulse control and violence towards themselves or others. This can sometimes be consistent with a conduct disorder or oppositional defiant disorder. Another possible outcome are problems with cognitive processing. Maltreatment can disrupt the development of executive functioning in children, which will impact their working memory, processing, planning, and decision-making. This can lead to issues with intelligence and language acquisition and may form intellectual or learning disabilities. Children who are maltreated have a number of possible outcomes, including a healthy normal adjustment. Why is it that children can experience the same traumatic events, but some are able to overcome the adversity while others are not? As children grow up and go through their developmental stages, they are presented with a series of different biological, psychological, and social variables. The existence or non-existence or combinations of these variables will influence the type of outcome a child will have. One category of these variables is called risk factors. These are aspects of a child's life that will happen before a negative outcome occurs and will increase the chances that the outcome will occur. This can include living in poverty, death of a parent, having a parent with substance abuse problems, homelessness, or anxiety. On the other hand, children will be exposed to protective factors. These are aspects of a child's life that will decrease the chances of negative outcome. These can include having a supportive adult figure, high self-esteem, good coping skills, or engagement with sports teams. Now that you have more of an understanding of how maltreatment can affect children, it is important to remember how traumatic events can significantly alter a child's path in life. Early intervention is so important because the sooner children can be helped, the better their chances at a healthy development. It is important that we, as a society, educate ourselves on what the signs of abuse are and what we can do to intervene. A great resource for this information is your local Children's Aid Society. I hope that you enjoyed my video, and thank you for listening.